Hi everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and I've got a treat for you today because I've roped in my buddy Thomas Busby, who is a professional Fujifilm photographer, to teach us how to take the perfect model shot. Thomas, thank you so much for joining me today.
Perfect is a big goal. Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Perfect in my eyes just means that it's going to look half decent. It's going to show up all the painting flaws.
We're to go for a 6 out of 10. Perfect.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
So Thomas, what we've done today is you have had a side-by-side tutorial with me where we have tried to replicate a shot that I did previously on Instagram, and then you've showed me how I can do it slightly better. So, how could I have done that shot better? It was pretty perfect.
Yeah. And so, pretty perfect. Oh my. Yeah, this is going to be a long video. So, yeah, I follow you on Instagram and I see quite a few of your shots, and I see, it's not just you, it's all hobbyist photographers. They aren't professional photographers for a living. All painters aren't professional photographers for a living. So, this applies to a lot of people. But I don't want to go into like any crazy in-depth settings. I don't want this to be like a camera course, just like something that any absolute noob at home with a paintbrush can do with their cell phone or real basic camera gear.
Brilliant. So what I'm using today is mostly just my iPhone, but I've also got this camera, which I think is really fancy.
Yeah, I like that you call it really fancy. Like, it's like if it was second-hand kind of thing, because it's old, you can't buy it new anymore. It'd literally just be a few hundred New Zealand dollars, which is like, we'll say $100 US. Like, it's not much, just the kit lens. It's nothing more than what you could spend just with a little bit of money on. Like, a compressor and an airbrush, say, would cost far more than this camera.
Okay, no worries. So nothing majorly, like, insane.
Correct, yeah. We're going to keep it a DIY at home, even just with your cell phone kind of tips.
Okay, brilliant. So, as a baseline, what are we doing first?
So, tip number 1 is don't shoot handheld. So, I said, like, a lot of people do this. They hold the camera, they hold the model in their hand, they've got the camera in their hand, and they just get a shot where they are kind of thing, because it's the easiest way to get the right angle. But I really need to stress, if you can just say, set your camera down on the table and get your hands away from it, this will reduce a lot of camera shake, a lot of blur, and will really just up your quality. Especially, say, with using a cell phone, a lot of newer cell phones also detect that there's not much movement going on, and so we'll just give you that better quality because you haven't got that camera shake.
Okay, so I can still hold my model so you get my juicy little finger nuggets in the shot, but just don't hold the phone.
Yeah, if you want. Honestly, it would be better actually to pop the model down on the table as well, just to remove the model shaking. But yeah, just don't actually. Put them both down on something solid. If you've got a tripod, that's even better, and then you can kind of pick your angles. You could even have, say, something set up next to you. We just put the model on like a little stand, have the tripod and everything sitting there. You go click and then carry on painting if you wanted. But for now, just putting the camera and the model down the table makes a big difference.
Okay, so we've done this. We've taken a side-by-side shot where I'm holding the camera and the model, and then we have the model and the camera stable, and there's a lot more crispness in the shot. Even I can see that.
Yeah, even your handheld one isn't too bad, just because it is like it's better than a cell phone, a lot better than a cell phone. But as soon as you put it down and remove that camera shake, you do get a lot more croppability. You can really zoom in even more just in editing, and that detail really holds up.
Okay, no, that's awesome. So, talking of camera settings and things like that, we've set the camera down, and we're pressing the button, and we're then taking the shot. What's kind of like your next tip in terms of being able to add the crispness?
So tip number 2 would be turn on your 2 or your 10-second timer. Most cell phones have this, just about all cameras have this. And just even when you push like the shutter button or touch on your phone screen to take that shot, you will shake your camera just a little bit. So if you turn on that 2-second timer, it just removes a little bit more of that shake and just will sharpen things up that bit more, just so nothing is moving at all when that camera finally takes the image.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that once or twice. It's like, you know, press down, and because the body isn't like perfectly flat underneath, as soon as you release it, it does just knock. Now that's an awesome tip. What have you got for us next?
So the next one is really, really important, is especially if you're doing like work in progress shots and you're taking a shot, you carry on painting, and you get back and you look at all your shots later on and see that you've messed one up, one of the photos, is always check your focus, whether at the time, like as you're taking the shot, be on, say, in manual focus if you want, and just take that little bit of extra time to check it, or as soon as you've taken the shot, double check, zoom in on your screen a little bit and make sure it is sharp, that it is in focus, because you can't go and then strip off a little bit of paint to do that progress shot again. So like I said, for those work in progress shots, just double check your shot, double check your focus after you've taken it. If it looks blurry, you can just reshoot it, but you can't go and repaint that little bit of progress you've just done.
Look, it's amazing you mentioned that, because I actually just posted something to Instagram recently and I was getting loads of comments. And then as I zoomed in on Instagram, I was like, man, this is atrocious. But I suppose when you've taken the shot, you can still zoom into it just to make sure that it's picking up details, that it's still nice and crisp, and doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that as well, especially if you're doing it as you're painting, it'll really mess with you emotionally. It'll really show all your flaws and how bad your paint job is. But it'll give you an idea of what your Instagram followers are going to see later on, and it might maybe make you notice something that you haven't seen in your paint job. So it might just help with your painting process as well.
Yep, I need all the help I can get with that, so this is a great tip.
You'll be both funny.
Right, so what have we got for the next tip?
So next up, tip number 4 is shoot at the model's eye level. So, actually you can play with this a little bit. If you want a model to look inferior, shoot down on it, like you're looking down on it. If you want it to look intimidating, have it up a little bit higher than your camera and shoot up at it. But the normal way that human see something is from an eye level. So that's another nice thing about like having your hands off the camera and having them both at the same level, is you're shooting like eyes onto your model. Say if you had a really tall model, you might need to shift up a little bit higher, but in saying that, tall models, it doesn't matter if you're looking up a little bit, because it makes them look more intimidating. But yeah, say if your model was like a foot tall, which is like, that's above infinity scale really, isn't it? But like you just need to get to that kind of eye level. Makes a big difference for, I guess, giving your models respect.
Oh, so when you're saying eye level, you're not like get to the Primaris Marine and like get into his eyes. You're kind of like
no, just have the camera at the same height as the eyes. Yeah, exactly. So no, I don't mean just shoot the pupils, because who can paint eyes? No, don't do that. Instagram followers drop.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm just using. I only buy models now that have masks. That's my new strategy.
The key to great Instagram following with painting. Don't paint eyes.
No, that's okay. Brilliant. So basically, going into eye level is your recommendation, even if that means you have to build the model up to like a slightly different height, or you have to maybe set your camera down to a slightly different level,
or your camera up, just whatever. But like, instead of like looking, because so many people do that, is they say if you're on a tripod or if you're hand holding it and you ignore tip number 1, you've got it on your table and you're looking down on it, and that can show a bit of the model you're trying to show the paint job off. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but for general, say you finished your painting and you're just trying to share it with people, being more to their eye level, it is a lot better way of displaying your final photo.
Oh, brilliant. That's absolutely perfect. Alrighty. I think we're ready for the next step.
Yeah, so those are the basic ones. Kind of anyone can do them with anything. The following ones do require a little bit more. So tip number 5 is add a light. Now, I have quite a bit of light, but a lot of people at home will still have an extra light, whether it's just your modeling light, or a real good one is borrow someone else in the house's cell phone, turn the torch on, and just move it around a little bit just to like add that light to the face or the weapon, whatever you're trying to show, rather than it being backlight and your model's kind of silhouette. And so this can be a nice way of making your model stand out a bit from the background, or make your background disappear a little bit because your camera might just expose for the model. And you can really have a bit more control of this by just changing the distance your light is from the model, whether you move your cell phone torch further away or closer, or you buy a nice proper light to get a better lighting result. Adding that light is how I sell all my models for far more than the quality of my paint job. Because I'm a photographer, I do great model photography when I sell it, and it makes it look quite fancy, but I think my paint job's 6 out of 10. It's perfect.
You're selling yourself short. I've seen your paint jobs and they are excellent. But
no, you've seen my photography of my paint jobs. That's good. Yeah.
No, lighting has been a huge bugbear of mine for years, because I saw the old GW tips and it was like, have a kind of like desk lamp one side, have a desk lamp the other side, so that there's no like harsh edges. But then you were like, well, what should the lumen count be? What should the color temperature be? And it all seemed really complicated. Does it need to be that complicated?
Yeah, it's the color of the light does make a difference. So some lights will be real blue or really yellow, and if you can find, like, if you're going to buy an extra light, if you can find one that is daylight colored, that is I think the best way to go and the easiest way to keep managing. I also don't mind, like, you just buy some real cheap LED lights and just have that little bit of a coloured glow coming from the side. Can really make things look really dynamic. So my favourite combination is a daylight coloured light, mostly hitting the front of the model, or just off to the side, like the face from to the side a little bit, and then from the opposite side and a little bit behind, I like to go for like a tealy blue. So this gives that kind of like teal and orange, like a daylight and teal, which is quite a cinematic colour, and it looks fancy. And those LED lights you can get really, really cheap. Even if you buy some of those like Google enabled light bulbs that let you change the colour, you can get them for pretty cheap, have it on a desk lamp, and you can shift it around just to get that background tinted colour. But yeah, the daylight coloured one for your main light is really important for photography, though you can get around it, like I said, with just a cell phone light.
And the added advantage is that adding that coloured light really hides any paint issues that you may have had.
It makes it look like you've added like object source lighting and stuff. Like everyone's got a plasma glow behind them, kind of thing. You can really fancy it up with just a light rather than paint jobs. Yeah,
yeah. I love this effect that we managed to achieve with the little bit of orange coming off the side. It kind of makes it seem like there's a fire or something off to the side. So it also adds to a bit of a story.
Yeah. So like normally I would go for a teal, but I think your one, just because your models were quite blue, it actually suited the red a lot better and added that contrast to them. And it's not something you could paint in. It would look weird from the wrong. It look weird from the right or wrong angle, but yeah, as a light source, it looked fantastic.
I'm definitely ready for the next tip.
So the next tip is make sure you get, like say in photography, if we're shooting sport, we say 2 eyes and a ball. Like if it's tennis, you want the tennis ball in it, or like if it's football or something, you want the football and the face in it, that connection. So when it comes to model photography, you do want, like say, if you're just doing one shot, not your detail shots, but just one shot, you want to see their face and their weapons. Like so, if you've just got that side on and you like, or the back of their head kind of thing, I mean, it's nice if you need to show that, but it does give that little bit of a disconnection. So humans by default, when looking at humanoid-ish shaped people, objects, models, they go to that face initially. If they can't see it, your eyes will like bounce out like in a subconscious way. Where if you can make that eye contact and then you can see like their gun or the weapon, that's just that little bit of a way to really hold the viewer's attention with the shot. So get the eyes, get the weapon. Every miniature's got a weapon of some sort. Every miniature worth painting's got a weapon of some sort. So eyes and the weapon, 2 eyes and a weapon rather than 2 eyes and a ball because it's not sport. That's that like, little guide to remember for when framing up your shot. Can I see the eyes? Can I see the weapon?
I found this really weird actually because just to throw a curveball, we actually did photograph a remote, so like a drone, that has no weapon because it's magnetized and didn't have it on there, and has no eyes because it's a drone. But weirdly, there's the lenses, and then there's kind of like a lens effect of like the glow and stuff, and I kind of almost view those as eyes.
Exactly, and so like I said humanoid, but I was trying to think of a term that enveloped everything, like robots and bugs and things like that. Like not everything has a face, but there will be a direction that you feel that model will move, that it has a face. And exactly like you said with the lenses and stuff, it's that little bit of a character. It's how you connect to it. Those lenses are its face. It doesn't have weapons, but its weapons are kind of like its legs nearly in a way, so they were important. And so they're not its weapons, but just what is the extra thing along the face that is important for me in this model?
That's absolutely ideal. Great tip there.
So tip number 7, work with your surroundings, especially your background and your foreground. So a lot of people just have their absolute mess of a paint station as their background. And
nine times out of 10.
And that's fine for a work in progress. Like, don't get me wrong. But when you're finished, set it up on your table. Set like a little bit of scenery around it. Create that little bit of a story, that little bit of an environment to put it in. It's just that really nice way to upsell your imagery. It's really not hard to do. And you can just go basic studio if you want, like just black bottom, black background, or white, depending on what color you want. But adding that, say that, like if you have a little display board for going to tournaments, or if you've got like a tabletop that's kind of set up, go and photograph on that. Like you've got some of that scenery there, it adds that character, that location, and just shifting from away from your messy paint station. For when the model's finished, is that nice little extra step you can do to add more to your miniature photography.
I've got thrown a couple of examples here because how I typically take my photos is my paint station is on my kitchen island, and that's like a white marble effect. And I used to think that the white was nice as a background. Do you think that certain colours might wash out other tones? Do you need to be conscious of that?
Also, what your camera will do, especially say if it's just brighter or darker coloured backgrounds, even if they're not admitting a light, but just to say if you're shooting a darker model on a whiter background, your camera looks at the whole scene and takes, like say an automatic, because we're not pro photographers here, I am. Everyone else is. I'm a big boy. Because most people will say if you're shooting with your cell phone or whatever, you won't be a professional photographer. What your camera does is it takes an average of everything in your shot. So it will look at that bright background and it'll look at your model, and it kind of finds a halfway in between. It doesn't just look at your model. I know that's all you're looking at when you're taking your photo, but it kind of exposes for the whole lot. So your background will be okay, but your model will be a little bit dark. And if you've got a black background, it might brighten things up a little bit too much, make your model sometimes look a little bit overexposed. And so you can kind of get that with colors a little bit as well. Like if you're shooting a blue model with a blue background, it'll disappear a little bit, and finding that balance is good. So one, if you can just blur your background out, but if you can get like the perfect color photographically is actually like a gray, like it's kind of like that halfway between black and white, and that'll suit everything quite nicely. So next up, tip 8 is remove distraction. So while you're adding those elements to your photos, to your foreground and your background, you really want to look out for, say, bright lights that are reflecting, say, from the window behind you, or maybe you've got a little bit of scenery there that's just really a vibrant color and it's pulling the eye away from it. So the more you can simplify down your surroundings in a way while still having that story, it just removes some of those distractions and helps keep the eye on the model.
Okay, fantastic. So even when you're doing like a group shot of multiple models, which I know is more the case of like Warhammer 40k, if you're doing a squad, do you try and make like one model the focus and then the rest kind of blur, or?
If you're selling it, or if you're showing quite a few photos, you want to try and get the whole lot sharp. So you kind of have them all side by side, or you might have to go back a little bit further. Just to, it's easy for your camera to get everything sharp if you're a little bit further away. And then I like to show, like, say, a couple of characters, a couple of close-ups, and have them as like your second and third and fourth shots kind of thing. So here's a vague overview, and that's the one you really want to narrow. Because when they look at it, and you want them to go, this is some good stuff, and then they go through the details, go, man, this is cool. But that first impression, that first shot you show, if you're doing a series, is really important.
Absolutely perfect. What we got next?
So tip number 9 is if you can tell a story. So we've kind of covered this a little bit in that background and foreground and just adding all these little extra elements to it. But if you can add that little bit of an interaction, or if you say that you kind of like you fake a little battle report nearly, like just adding those little bit more of that environment, that story can really engage it. We did cover this off a little bit earlier on, like I said, but it can help. It can definitely add more to your photos. And the final tip, and it's easily the biggest one and the most important one, is good photos take time. Far more time than anyone is currently spending on their photos. And so just be prepared for good photos to take a bit more time. Like, as you develop your painting skills and you go from just slapping on 3 paints and calling it done, and you realise edge highlighting, shading stuff take a bit more. Same goes for photography. You just need to spend a little bit more time and consider it like that final stage of your painting process, and just put a bit more time into it, and you'll hugely increase the quality of your shots.
No, perfect. Those are some 10 great tips. Right. What I'm going to do is we're going to just quickly analyse the final shot. Thomas is going to give us a bit of information as to how we composed it, what the key elements were for it, and how you can replicate this yourself.
So what we did for this photo here is initially we were struggling with one of those earlier tips of getting it at eye level. So this is just on your battle play mat, which has that little bit of a texture in the foreground there. But I just slipped, I think it was like a little book or something underneath, just to raise the model up a little bit, but still had that ground underneath, and you can't see that. We did actually struggle quite a bit with just trying to simplify that background. We didn't have a huge amount of lighting here, but just to make it no distracting elements. And one thing I did want behind the model was just black. So if you decide to chop the sides off and have it kind of like a studio shot and just simple, you can, but it shows a bit of your surroundings to it. You can really see, like, it's obvious on the base. We've got that little bit of a red light from the side. So it's very obvious there, but the rest of the model adds that little bit of a red glow object source lighting. There's no object to see it from. Because it was a blue model, it really add that nice little bit of contrast to it, and it helps emphasize your lighting, your shadows, your highlights. But the main one that's lighting the model up here, is just a basic light. Do you remember what we used for the light?
Just my iPhone.
It was just an iPhone?
Yeah.
Awesome, yeah. So just a cell phone light. That's not exactly daylight coloured. It's good enough. And that was the main light, just hitting the model to show the colours accurately, like how you painted them, and give that little bit of a depth. And so adding those coloured lights throws off your paint job. You don't want to do just coloured lights. You need them just as your extra colour.
Less is more.
Yeah, in a way.
A little bit of a hint, but don't go nuts.
You don't want the whole model glowing red when it's a white model.
Yeah. That's awesome. Another thing I absolutely love about this, so explaining that little glow actually, sorry, I don't love this, but the reason why we got so much of the other source lighting was that I've got like Perspex line of fire markers on my Infinity models.
Yeah.
So in most models, because it's not going to be plastic, like a clear plastic, it's not going to pick that up too badly. But I mean, is there anything that you could otherwise recommend to try and like reduce any harshness?
So if you didn't want that red glow on that base, literally just shifting the position of the light a little bit. Or what's real easy, if you have, like, say, something dark in front of the light, to cast a shadow. Okay. And you slowly move it up or down, because maybe you only want the light to, say, in this case, if we only wanted the red glow on the top half, you just cast a shadow just from that one. Not from your main daylight coloured light, but just from the red one, and then it can only affect just the top or just the bottom if you wanted. So that's an easy way to make it a bit more directional.
That's absolutely amazing. Hey, Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's been hugely helpful for me, and if nothing else, I now know a little bit better as to how I can photograph my very average miniatures. So thank you so much for that.
No worries at all, mate. I really appreciate you having me. Finally, guys, if you'd like these 10 tips as like an easy-to-use cheat sheet, do head over to the Infinity Gamer. What's your Instagram page?
_Infinity Gamer.
Yeah, we'll leave a link. You can leave a link for it down in the description below. Head over to the Instagram page and you can screenshot, share, whatever you need to do with these top 10 tips, just to make it easy to have on you, easy to remember for when you're taking photos of your miniatures.
Alright, thanks so much for checking out this video. Obviously, if you want to see more of this sort of content in the future, and subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. And I'll be back again soon. Thanks, bye.